He crimson Discovery Captain Marcus Kane pressed his palm against the cold metal of the derelict ship's airlock. 3 weeks of drifting through the void had led him here, to this massive vessel floating dead in space. His small scout ship, the Defiant, looked like a toy beside the alien craft that stretched nearly 2 kilometers in length. The airlock hissed open, revealing corridors lined with what looked like crystallized blood. Marcus adjusted his helmet's light, casting eerie shadows across walls that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. His scanner detected minimal atmosphere, but something else made his blood run cold. Life signs. Faint, but definitely there. He moved deeper into the ship, following the signal. The architecture was unlike anything in human records. Organic curves blended with metallic surfaces, creating passages that felt more like arteries than hallways. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls, responding to his presence with increased luminosity. The life sign grew stronger as he descended. Marcus found himself in a vast chamber dominated by a single stasis pod. Inside, suspended in crimson fluid, was a being that defied easy description. Humanoid in shape, but clearly alien, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer and hair like spun, silver. Most unsettling were her eyes, which tracked his movement despite her apparent unconsciousness. Without warning, the pod began to drain. Marcus stepped back, hand moving to his sidearm, but something held him in place. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps the strange beauty of the creature within. The pod opened with a sound like a sigh, and she emerged. She was tall, graceful, and utterly alien. When she looked at him, Marcus felt as though she was seeing straight through to his soul. She approached slowly, each step deliberate and predatory. He should have run, should have called for backup, but he stood frozen as she reached him. Her hand touched his cheek, surprisingly warm. Then, faster than he could react, she pulled him close. Pain flared as her teeth found his neck, but it was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Not just physical, but mental, emotional. He felt her desperation, her hunger, her loneliness spanning centuries. When she pulled away, her eyes were wide with shock. She stumbled backward, then fell to her knees before him. Her voice, when it came, was melodic, despite its alien quality. "You, taste of starlight and defiance," she whispered, her accent strange and musical. "I have tasted the blood of 100 species across the galaxy, but never have I encountered anything like yours. What are you, small warrior?" Marcus touched his neck, feeling the small wounds already beginning to heal. "Human," he said simply. "My name is Marcus Kane." She remained on her knees, staring up at him with something approaching reverence. "Human," she repeated as if tasting the word. "I am Zephyra of the Sanguine Fleet. And I fear I have made a terrible—" The blood-bond Zephyra rose slowly, her movements graceful despite the obvious weakness in her limbs. Marcus kept his distance, hand still resting on his weapon, though something told him it would be useless against her. "You should kill me now," she said, her voice carrying centuries of weariness. "What I have done to you cannot be undone. The blood bond has been formed." Marcus frowned. "Blood bond? What are you talking about?" She gestured to the marks on his neck. "My people, the Valdari, we are what you might call vampiric. But we are not mere predators. When we feed, we create connections. Usually the subject dies or becomes a thrall. But you—" She shook her head in wonder. "Your blood rejected my dominance. Instead, it has bound us as equals." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Bound us how?" "I can feel your emotions," Zephyra said, pressing a hand to her chest. "Your confusion, your fear, but also your incredible will to survive. And you can feel mine, can you not?" Marcus paused, realizing she was right. Beneath his own thoughts, he could sense something else. Ancient sadness, desperate hope, and underneath it all, a strength that had endured for millennia. My ship, Zephyra continued, has been drifting for 300 years. My crew, my family, they all died in the last Great War. I went into stasis to await rescue that never came. Until you. Marcus looked around the chamber, really seeing it for the first time. What he had taken for decoration were actually memorial markers, thousands of them, covering every surface. An entire civilization, reduced to memory. What war? He asked. Zephyra's eyes darkened. The Devourers came from beyond the rim of the galaxy. They consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing behind but empty space. We fought them for 1,000 years, but in the end, we were too few. The Valdari made our final stand at the Battle of Seven Suns. She moved to a wall display, her touch bringing it to life. Images flowed across the surface showing a battle of unimaginable scale. Ships the size of moons clashing in the void, entire star systems burning as weapons beyond human understanding tore reality apart. We thought we had won, Zephyra whispered. The Devourer fleet was destroyed, their hive ships shattered. But victory came at too high a price. The Valdari were extinct except for a few survivors like myself. Marcus felt her pain through their connection, a grief so profound it threatened to overwhelm him. But beneath it, he sensed something else. Hope, kindled by their meeting. Why, are you telling me this? He asked. Zephyra turned to face him, and for the first time, Marcus saw something other than despair in her ancient eyes. Because, Marcus Kane of the humans, I believe your species may be the key to preventing the Devourer's return. They are not gone, merely sleeping, rebuilding their strength in the dark between galaxies. She stepped closer, her hand reaching out but stopping just short of touching him. Through our bond, I have tasted not just your blood, but your spirit. Humans possess something my people lost long ago. You have the fire of youth, the refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Marcus felt the truth of her words, resonating through their connection. Despite everything, despite the impossibility of the situation, he found himself believing her. What do you need from me? He asked. Zephyra smiled for the first time, and it transformed her entire face. Help me wake my ship, Marcus Kane. Help me return to the stars. And in return, I will show your species wonders beyond imagination and prepare them for the war that is coming. Mistake. Awakening. The Leviathan Marcus followed Zephyra through corridors that began to pulse with renewed life. The ship, she explained, was more than metal and circuitry. It was a living entity, grown rather than built, and it had been slowly dying during her long sleep. The Valdari did not build ships as your people do, she said, her hand trailing along the wall as they walked. We cultivated them, bred them from creatures that lived between the stars. The Crimson Dawn has been my companion for over 2,000 years. They reached what Zephyra called the heart chamber, a vast space dominated by what looked like an enormous crystalline tree. Its branches reached toward the ceiling, pulsing with faint red light. At its base sat a throne-like chair surrounded by control surfaces that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. This is where I commune with the ship, Zephyra explained, but I am too weak from my long sleep. The bond we share, however, may provide the strength needed. Marcus looked skeptical. I don't know anything about alien technology. You do not need to know, Zephyra replied. You need only to trust me, and I you. Give me your hand. Against his better judgment, Marcus extended his hand. Zephyra took it gently, her skin cool against his. She led him to the throne and settled into it, pulling him down beside her. The chair reshaped itself to accommodate them both. Close your eyes, she whispered. Let our connection deepen. Marcus felt the bond between them strengthen, their thoughts beginning to merge. Through Zephyr's memories, he experienced the ship's awakening. It was like touching the mind of a vast, benevolent creature that had been sleeping for centuries. The Crimson Dawn stirred. Systems that had been dormant began to activate. The crystalline tree blazed with new light, its branches reaching higher. Throughout the ship, corridors brightened and machinery hummed to life. But something was wrong. Marcus felt it through Zephyr's alarm. The ship's sensors were detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the edge of the system. Impossible. Zephyr breathed, her eyes snapping open. They cannot have found us so quickly. The main display activated, showing the space around them. Marcus's blood ran cold. Ships were emerging from what looked like tears in space itself. Dozens of them. Black as the void between stars, their hulls covered in what looked like organic growths. Devourers, Zephyr whispered. The awakening of my ship has drawn them here. Marcus watched in horror as the alien vessels began to move toward them. Each one was easily the size of his entire ship, and their weapons were already charging with malevolent energy. Can we run? He asked. Zephyr shook her head. The Crimson Dawn is still too weak. We need time to fully awaken her systems. She turned to him, her eyes fierce with determination. But there is another way. Your ship, it is fast, yes? Marcus nodded. The Defiant is built for speed and maneuverability. Then we use both vessels, Zephyr said, rising from the throne. You return to your ship and draw them away. I will continue awakening the dawn. When she is ready, I will come for you. That's suicide, Marcus protested. My ship is a scout vessel. I can't fight that fleet. Zephyr placed her hands on his shoulders, their bond allowing him to feel her confidence. You are human, Marcus Kane. Your species has survived and thrived against impossible odds. You will find a way. As if to emphasize her point, the first Devourer weapons fired. Beams of dark energy lanced through space, barely missing the derelict vessel. The Crimson Dawn shuddered under the near impact. Marcus made his decision. How long do you need? 1 hour, Zephyr replied. Can you give me 1 hour? Marcus grinned despite the impossible situation. Watch me. He kissed her forehead, quickly surprised by his own boldness, then ran for the airlock. Behind him, he could feel Zephyr's amazement through their bond, followed by something that might have been affection. Dance of the defiant Marcus sealed the airlock behind him and sprinted to his ship's bridge. The Defiant came alive at his touch, engines spinning up to full power. Through the view screen, he could see the Devourer fleet spreading out to surround both vessels. Come on, you ugly bastards, he muttered, engaging the engines. Let's see how you handle human stubbornness. The Defiant shot away from the Crimson Dawn like a bullet, immediately drawing the attention of the enemy fleet. Marcus had to admire their coordination as they adjusted their formation to pursue him, but he also noticed something else. They were being careful not to damage the Valdari ship. They want it intact, he realized, speaking to Zephyr through their bond. Why? Her voice came back, tinged with horror. Valdari technology. They seek to add our capabilities to their own. We must not let them succeed. Marcus threw the Defiant into a series of evasive maneuvers as energy beams carved through the space around him. His ship was fast, but the Devourers had numbers and firepower. It was only a matter of time. But Marcus had one advantage they didn't expect. Through his bond with Zephyr, he could sense their intentions a split second before they acted. It was like having a tactical computer linked directly to his brain. He dove between two of the larger vessels, their shots missing him by meters. A barrage of missiles followed, but Marcus had already anticipated their trajectory. The Defiant, corkscrewed through the deadly rain, untouched. For 20 minutes, He played a deadly game of cat and mouse among the asteroid field at the system's edge. The Devourers grew increasingly frustrated, their formations becoming less coordinated, as they focused on the single small ship that continued to elude them. But Marcus could feel exhaustion creeping in. The connection with Zephyra was taking its toll, and his ship's systems were beginning to show strain. He needed to buy more time, but he was running out of options. That's when inspiration struck. The system's star was young and volatile, prone to solar flares. If he could get close enough, use the star's magnetic field. Marcus turned the Defiant toward the sun, pushing his engines beyond their safety limits. The Devourer fleet followed, their hunger for the kill overriding caution. As they approached, the star's corona. Marcus felt Zephyra's alarm through their bond. The plan he was forming was insane even by human standards, but it might just work. He waited until the fleet was committed to their pursuit vector, then fired his emergency retro thrusters while simultaneously reversing his ship's polarity. The Defiant shot backward through the Devourer formation just as a massive solar flare erupted from the star's surface. The electromagnetic pulse disabled half the enemy fleet instantly. The rest were thrown into chaos as their organic systems struggled to adapt. Marcus used the confusion to put distance between himself and the survivors. "Zephyra!" he called through their bond. "Please tell me you're ready." Her response came not in words, but in sensation. Power, vast and ancient, awakening at last. The Crimson Dawn appeared beside him in a flash of red light, no longer a derelict, but a ship reborn. Its hull gleamed like polished blood, and weapons that defied description extended from its sides. "Hold on, my brave human," Zephyra's voice whispered in his mind. "Let me show you how the Valdari wage war." The Crimson Reckoning. The Crimson Dawn moved like a living creature, flowing through space with deadly grace. Marcus watched in awe as Zephyra brought her ship's weapons to bear on the surviving Devourers. Energy beams that looked like liquid. Fire carved through the enemy vessels, while projectiles that seemed to bend space itself found their targets with impossible accuracy. But the Devourers were not defenseless. The remaining ships formed a defensive sphere, their own weapons creating a web of destructive energy. One of their larger vessels began to glow with ominous power, preparing what looked like a planet-killing weapon. "They're going to destroy the entire system," Marcus realized, his voice tight with fear. Through their bond, he felt Zephyra's grim determination. "Not if I can help it." The Crimson Dawn suddenly accelerated toward the charging weapon, ignoring the defensive fire that scorched its hull. Marcus could feel Zephyra's pain as her ship was damaged, but also her unwavering resolve. "What are you doing?" he called out. "What my people should have done centuries ago," she replied. Ending this, the Valdari ship transformed before Marcus's eyes. Its hull began to separate and reconfigure, revealing what lay at its heart. Not machinery, but something that looked almost like a massive heart, pulsing with the collected life force of an entire civilization. "The souls of my people," Zephyra explained, her mental voice growing faint. "We preserve our dead within our ships, so they may continue to serve even in death. I am going to release them all at once." Marcus felt the magnitude of what she planned. Through their bond, it would destroy the Devourer fleet, but it would also drain the ship's life completely. Zephyra would not survive. "No," he said firmly. "There has to be another way." But Zephyra was already committed to her course. The heart of her ship began to pulse faster, building toward a final devastating release. That's when Marcus made a decision that would have seemed insane to any rational being. He pushed the Defiant to maximum acceleration, racing toward the Crimson Dawn. "Marcus, what are you doing?" Zephyra's alarm flooded through their bond. "Something human," he replied, docking with her ship even as the final battle raged around. them. He ran through the corridors, now blazing with the power of 10,000 awakened souls. He found Zephyra in the heart chamber, her hands pressed against the crystalline tree, tears of light streaming down her face. "You cannot stop this," she said without looking at him. "My people demand vengeance." "Then let me help," Marcus said, placing his hands over hers. The moment they touched, their bond exploded into something greater. Marcus felt the presence of every Valdari soul within the ship, their anger and pain and desperate need for justice. But he also felt something else: hope. The same hope that had driven humanity to the stars. Together, Marcus and Zephyra channeled that combined power not into destruction, but into something new. The energy that would have consumed both ships instead reached out across space, touching every devourer vessel simultaneously. But instead of destroying them, it changed them. The organic components of their ships began to transform, the corrupting influence that drove them to consume replaced by something else: curiosity, wonder, the desire to create rather than destroy. One by one, the devourer ships powered down their weapons. Their hive mind, focused on consumption for millions of years, suddenly found itself capable of independent thought. Marcus and Zephyra collapsed together, their strength spent, but their bond stronger than ever. Around them, the Crimson Dawn settled into a new configuration, its system stabilized by the infusion of human determination and Valdari wisdom. "What have we done?" Zephyra whispered. Marcus smiled weakly. "Something impossible. Something human." Through the view screen, they watched as the former Devourer fleet began to scatter, each ship heading in a different direction, not to consume, but to explore, to learn, to become something more than they had been. "They will remember this day," Zephyra said, her head resting against Marcus's shoulder. "The day two unlikely souls proved that even the darkest creatures can be redeemed." Marcus felt their bond settling into something permanent, something that would last for whatever years remained to them. Human and Valdari, joined by blood and choice and the strange alchemy of hope. "So what happens now?" he asked. Zephyra smiled, and in that smile, Marcus saw the future. A galaxy where humans and the few remaining Valdari would stand together, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. "Now," she said, "we go home. Both of us." The Crimson Dawn and the Defiant, bound together by more than mere docking clamps, turned toward human space. Behind them, the transformed fleet dispersed to spread a new message across the galaxy: that redemption was possible, that change was the only constant, and that sometimes the most unlikely bonds were the strongest of all.